Well, good afternoon or good morning, because it's still morning technically here in the United States of America. Welcome to GarageBand Editing 101, or what do I call this thing? GarageBand Podcast Editing in Real Life 101 with me, DP Knudten, which you can see right there. And this is what I do every Saturday because I have a podcast that comes out every single Monday at 3 a.m. Central Time. Why? Just so that anyone halfway across the Atlantic can get that podcast right away and listen to it immediately. And I have to edit every episode I do because I hand edit every episode because I'm kind of a lazy perfectionist. Is that such a thing? Yeah, it is. And that's exactly what I am, which is I like doing it myself and I am a perfectionist, but I don't get a big jump on the game by doing a lot of these early. Instead, I do it every Saturday right before the Monday premiere of the episode. And this weekend's no exception. So what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be editing my podcast in real time in GarageBand, Apple's free program for anybody that has a fairly recent Apple desktop, laptop, whatever. You can download GarageBand for free and get 90+% of the power of a professional audio editing studio for zero cost. And as a cheap dad, I love that. So, and I've been doing this quite a while because my first podcast had 40 episodes. My current podcast, every single Wednesday or every single Monday, this one I'll be editing today is episode 139, or actually 140. So this will be episode 140, which is pretty darn impressive if you ask me, given the fact that I'm not exactly a uber type A person. But that just means I need to get this thing edited. So I'm going to start right now. And what I'm going to share with you is my file system, which is not very involved or complicated. But you can see I've got a couple of different podcast episodes here. And last week's episode with Evelyn Starr was 139. All I did was take that folder, which has a bunch of finished files, and I copied it. And I only have two .band files in there, which is the way that GarageBand has their files formatted or their style. .band means that it's a GarageBand file. So I've got two there, and the one I want to open is this one. But before I do, I need to remember that this is actually episode 140. So I need to do a little bit of name revision here. Oops, that's the wrong one. I don't want to do that. So there we go. Instead, I can do this. I don't want that to open up. Sorry. Good. Change the file names there. Change it there as well. And I am good to go. Unfortunately, this is showing you GarageBand. Hold on. Oh, hold on. I'm watching an old one over here on Facebook. I always open up my Facebook page so I can see what's happening. There we go. There's me going live. And I'm cool. So, going back to what I was working on, I need to open up this episode 140, evelynstar.band. Do that by just double clicking on it, and that will open in GarageBand. GarageBand. It's acting funny, so I'm got it. I'm going to restart it. Reopen it. Come on, baby. Where are you, GarageBand? There we are. Thank you very much. Now you can see I've got my previous episode right here, and then I've got the episode content right there that I'm going to edit. And first thing I'm going to do is get rid of all this automation. This is the volume automation for each of the tracks. I'm going to delete that out so I can have it start at 0.0. Actually, as close to 0.0 as I can get it. And do the same thing here. This is called Unity. I want to get that at 0.0. And then I make changes to volume from there. I don't want it to be too hot. I don't want it to be too cold when it comes to volume level. So if you start at 0.0, that'll give you the chance to give a little bit of boost to the signal or duck it down. Or I call it goosing or ducking. You goose it to get it up. You duck it to bring it down. And that's a big part of what I'm doing here. This stuff in the middle here I can just get rid of. This is my music track. Do that to clean it up. And we are good to go. Now I'm going to get rid of that and get rid of last week's episode material. But I want so I'll just delete. And then I need to drag this week's episode material all the way to the front. And you can see my voice, guest voice. All the settings were set for the EQ and everything between my guest and myself. This is why I copied last week's episode. I don't have to do anything with resetting EQ or the noise gate or anything like that when I just take everything that we recorded last week and have the same settings with this week by doing it very simply. Now, one of the things I know about my podcast is I like a 2-second pre-roll of the music. So if this is me talking, I want to line up stuff right at 2 seconds-ish and see how things sound. I'm going to mute the music bed for a second so I can listen to see if I can start it right there. Because sometimes between episodes, there's some talking between me and my guest before we get rolling again. Brand. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. Oh, okay. So there is actually, and this is the cool thing about GarageBand, the audio file in here, these are not actual cuts, hard cuts. They're software cuts. Because look, I can drag all this stuff back in if I need to. And that's very cool. Teenage waste brand. All right. So let's move this back a little bit because I think, let's see how this goes. So the book. All right. So the book. That's where I want to start. I'm going to line up So the book right at 2 seconds. Teenage waste. So the book. So the book. Teenage. I just want to tighten that up, so I'm going to hit Command T to trim both tracks. Now I've highlighted both tracks so I can do this to both tracks. And then I just tighten it up a little bit and listen back. So the book. Teenage waste brand. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. I know that gap is a little bit big, so I'm going to preemptively just tighten it up a little bit. Brand. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. First of all, when is it coming out? And second of all, what's it all about? Okay, so
the book will be available on Amazon at the end of March.
Scaling. First of all, when is it? Okay, there was a first of all. First of all. So get rid of that little and move this up over here. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. First of all, that felt a little tight, so I'm going to pull it back a little. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. First of all, a little bit more maybe. How your brand can stop struggling and start scaling. First of all, okay, when is it? That's better. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the music bed in so I can hear it from the beginning. I'm going to highlight my volume automation tracks here just to see where they're at. So the book, Teenage Waste Brand. All right, so from there, I just want to goose, because the music's a little bit louder, I just am going to bring up the volume on my voice a little bit. So the book, Teenage Waste Brand, How Your Brand Can Stop Struggling. All right, so I might give a little bit. Now, I'm always doing a pair of points there so I can get a nice level thing going on. So the book, Teenage Waste Brand, How Your Brand Can Stop Struggling and Start Scaling. First of all, when is it coming out? And second of all, what's it all about? Okay, so I think...
So the book will be available on Amazon.
All right, so I think she's fine. Need to cut out that little that's not necessary, and let's listen to the timing on this. When is it coming out? And second of all, what's it all about?
So the book will be available on...
Don't need that. So the book... Second of all, what's it all about?
So the book will be available on Amazon at the end of March. And that's the short answer.
And is not needed, or the lip smacking, that's the short answer.
So the book will be available on Amazon at the end of March. That's the short answer for that one. And what's it all about?
All right, so there's a big breath right there. And I'm just going to double check to see what her noise gate is set at. Ooh, it's pretty, it's at 24, minus 24 dB. So I don't want to mess with that. If it's a big breath like this, I'm going to cut it out because it's totally separate. I can get rid of it with no problem whatsoever.
On at the end of March. That's the short answer for that one. And what's it all about? So,
and what's it all about? I take out uhs whenever possible because I find them as a listener to be annoying. Sometimes it's okay to leave an in there if you want to make the point that someone's thinking about the question or something. But if it's just a vocal tick, take it out, and you'll see what I mean.
And what's it all about? So. Don't tighten it up all the way necessarily. And what's it all about? So as we were talking about last week, and I told you that.
So as we were talking about last week, so let's see.
As we were talking about last.
So it's so as we were talking about last week. So I don't need this part. So.
What's it all about? So as we were talking about last week, and I told you that I started to discover almost by accident that brands have an adolescence like human adolescence. This book is my...
Okay, so there's a little bit of...
This book...
That little... I can get that, cut that out, tighten it up, and be cool with it.
Human adolescence. This book is my exploration of all...
Okay, that felt maybe a little too tight.
Adolescence, like human adolescence. This book...
Yeah, that did. Adolescence, let that sit a little bit so people go, oh, okay, I understand the concept.
Brands have an adolescence, like human adolescence. This book is my exploration of all the different ways brands can manifest an adolescent symptom and what the remedy...
Did you hear that little...
And what...
Yeah, it's there.
And what
That's pretty subtle. Let's see if I can noise gate that out. So I'm looping it. Now I check my noise gate. This is dangerous at this level. See, I got to go to minus 17 dB. Yeah, boy, this could cut out all the S's and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave it there, but I might have to change that back because that's a very, very sensitive noise gate. If you want to know what a noise gate is, ask me in the comments because I'll be able to see them real time on Facebook Live, Twitch, and YouTube Live. So if you want me to talk about noise gates, I can, but otherwise, stick with me.
Manifest an adolescent symptom.
Okay, did you hear that?
Brands can manifest an adolescent symptom.
It feels like it's cutting stuff off. So here, if I turn off the noise gate.
Brands can manifest an adolescent symptom and what the...
Okay, it sounded much better. I took the noise gate, it was at like 27, which will cut out most of the...
Brands can manifest an adolescent symptom and what the...
All right, something like that I have to cut out because if I set the noise gate too sensitive, it cuts out too much stuff like sounds.
Can manifest an adolescent symptom and what the remedies are. So, for example, brands can have an identity crisis, they can oversleep, they can run with the wrong crowd, they can suffer from FOMO, they can assert their independence. They can They can suffer from FOMO. They can assert their independence.
So this breath, the little guffaw is fine, but the breath is not necessary.
They can suffer from FOMO. They can assert their independence. They can suffer from FOMO. They can assert their independence. I found 8 different...
Okay, so there's there. I'm going to have to cut that out.
They can assert their independence. I found 8 different 8 different sort of 8 different sort of human adolescent symptoms that also apply to brands and correlate to something that's missing in the brand or in something that's missing in the marketing. Or in something that's missing in the marketing.
Well, and I'm looking at your
something that's missing in the marketing.
Well, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn feed, your LinkedIn. So let's see if I can get rid of the
in the marketing.
Well, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn feed, and you recently reposted a blog post that I think you wrote in 2012. I think you wrote in 2012. I don't need to have that big gap because I was actually looking it up when she wrote it. In 2012, but it remains one of my most popular, updated on July 10th, 2020. And it's all about a... So I got an and a little cough. Get rid of both. Tighten it up. Updated on July 10th, 2020. And it's all about a couple of brands. Oh, see, I did 2 takes because I had to sniff. So I just get rid of the first take and go right with the second. 10th, 2020. And it's all about a couple of brands that I personally have loved to watch and, in this case, drink and eat. Dunkin' Donuts. I'm leaving this in there because it's kind of a human thing. And in this case, drink and eat. Dunkin' Donuts. But I'm not keeping the because I can get rid of it. If you can get rid of an get rid of the In this case, drink and eat Dunkin' Donuts, Polaroid. Eat Dunkin' Donuts, Polaroid, which is a very interesting story, and you draw some lessons. And you draw some, and so and and you I can have the same effect by going very interesting story, and you draw some lessons from those, and you draw some lessons. Just tighten it up. It's gonna sound better. And you draw some lessons from those two brands. What were those lessons? Draw some lessons from those two brands. What were the... Again, it's timing. From those two brands. What were those lessons? And can you explain what you were thinking about those specific lessons? Those specific lessons. And can you explain what you were thinking about those specific lessons when it comes to... Okay, that felt like... it felt a little too tight. And can you explain what you were thinking about those specific lessons when it comes to keeping a brand? When it comes to keeping a brand. Thinking about those specific lessons when it comes to keeping a brand, I guess, growing. I can have some of that kind of temporizing stuff. I guess growing. Comes to keeping a brand, I guess, growing, scaling, and sustainable well over time. Sustainable well over time. Sustainable well over time. And sustainable well over time. Let's see. Scaling and sustainable well over time. Well over time. I said well kind of weird. So I'm going to try to iron it out by tightening things up like that. So scaling and sustainable well over time.
So that's one of my favorite.
See, set her up. Going to say, so that's one of my favorite. Sustainable well over time.
That's one of my favorite posts because...
Oh, so get rid of that. That's one of my favorite posts because... And sustainable well over time.
That's one of my favorite posts because the picture that I have associated that for any listeners who are, let's say, over 30. Picture that I have associated that for any listeners who are, let's say, over.
Okay, heard something like right there. I wonder what that is.
Associated that for any listener.
It's a little breathy thing. So let's cut it out. Could I leave it in? Yeah, I probably could, but here's the thing. I'm going to compress everything. So that compression brings the top down and the bottom up, kind of panini pressing the audio. So anything that's there that's low is going to be accentuated, including a little bit of breath is going to become I don't need that. So get rid of the breath.
Picture that I have associated that for any listeners who are, let's say, over 35 or 40, you might remember.
Okay, did you hear that sniff?
You might remember.
That sniff does not need to be there, so let's cut it out.
Say, over 35 or 40, you might remember Fred the baker from the Dunkin' Donuts commercial. I have a
Time to make the donuts.
Time to make the donuts. Yes, Michael Vale. He's very sweet. yes. Michael Vale, he's very sweet.
Okay, there's some
He's very
Michael Vale. Michael Vale, very sweet.
Make the donuts, yes. Michael Vale, he's very sweet. So
Okay, all that stuff.
when I got to
Michael Vale, very sweet. No one understands what that very sweet means. Michael Vale. I got to donuts.
Time to make the donuts, yes. Michael Vale. When I got to
time to make the donuts, yes. Michael Vale. No one knows what we're talking about. Time to make the donuts, yes. Time to make the donuts.
Time to make the donuts, yes.
Okay, so this in her track is a breath, so I'm going to cut that out. Because again, it doesn't need to be there when I compress this. I wonder if I could.
From the Dunkin' Donuts commercial, I have a
time
picture
to
of
make the
myself with him.
donut. I have a picture of myself with him is not important. So let's do this.
Remember Fred the baker from the Dunkin' Donuts commercial? I have
time to make the donut. I have
commercial. I have
time to make from the commercial.
35 or 40. You might remember Fred the baker from the Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Time to make commercial.
Fred the baker from the Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Time to make the So I think I might have to do a little automation stuff where I'm going to drop. Come on, baby. Need to grab that dot and drag it down. That'll effectively duck the volume.
Donuts commercial.
Time to make Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
The Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Time to make the donut.
The Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Time to make the. Yeah, so that.
You might remember Fred the baker from the Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Time to make the donuts.
Time to make the donuts, yes. When I got to
Yes. So. Yes. Time to make the donuts. The donuts.
Time to make the donuts, yes. When I got.
So she got a little bit of yes. Time to make the donuts, yes. Donuts.
Time to make the donuts, yes. When I got to Time to make the donuts, yes. When I got to Dunkin', they were in the.
Don't need the When I got to Dunkin'.
When I got to Dunkin', they were in the middle of a transition. You know, the company was founded around 1950, basically on donuts and.
Okay, so there was a.
You know, the company was founded around 1950.
Find it around like this right there. I don't think is needed, and it'll aid comprehension to get rid of it, and might as well get rid of that stuff too. Let's see what happens. Does this now make sense?
You know, the company was founded around 1950.
Around, I can have that pretty close because that works.
You know, the company was founded around 1950. Basically.
Okay, there's let's see. I want to see where that
was founded around.
Okay, that little period at the end of that needs to go away because that's making a sound that does not aid in comprehension, nor is it a word. So get rid of it.
You know, the company was founded around 1950. Basically.
Okay, there's still something weird going on. It could be this whole thing, right? So I'm just gonna Rid of it. Founded around.
The company was founded around 1950, basically.
Around 1950.
Middle of a transition. The company was founded around 1950, basically on donuts and coffee. And
so breath, little mouth noise. Take that and
donuts are extreme. On donuts and coffee. And donuts are extremely labor intensive. I can tell you that from personal experience, not just, the intellectual knowledge.
Not just. Look at all this crap I'm getting rid of. Just get rid of it and let's see if it makes sense.
I can tell you that from personal experience, not just intellectual knowledge, because one of the things that happened when
there's an in there.
Knowledge because one of the things.
And the thing is, if you're not hearing it on the first pass, that's okay. If you do this enough, you will become more and more. You'll use your ears better and better over time. You'll become more sensitized to this stuff.
It's not just intellectual knowledge, because one of the things that happened when I got to Dunkin' Donuts is they compelled me to go through Dunkin' Donuts University. So I spent several weeks making the donuts.
Okay, so that's what I call the Barbaro, Michael Barbaro on The Daily, the New York Times podcast. He'll always leave his He'll leave them in because and I've heard him explain why they do that, and it's to make sure that people know that he's in an actual conversation with people. Now, I think his are a little too studied, a little too cute, but it is nice to remind people that this is a live conversation. So that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm going to leave this Barbaro in there.
They compelled me to go through Dunkin' Donuts University. So I spent several weeks making the donuts. And your listeners.
Okay, did you hear that big breath there? Again, this has to do with where her microphone is placed in relationship to her mouth, her nose, and her face. And it picks up a little too much breath.
And your listeners might. I spent several weeks making the donuts. And your listeners might be interested to know that the bowl alone for the mixer is 35 pounds empty. So a lot of muscle there.
So a lot of muscle there.
Bowl alone for the mixer is 35 pounds empty. So a lot of muscle there.
Again, see that? Got to cut it out. It makes it a tedious way to have to edit a podcast, but if you care about the quality of your podcast, it's what you have to do to make sure you have a quality podcast.
For the mixer is 35 pounds empty. So a lot of muscle there. But when I got there and
see, cut it out. Don't need it. Cut it out.
Pounds empty. So a lot of muscle there. When I got there in the mid-90s.
Okay, when I got there, leave a bigger gap, end of sentence, bigger conversation thing.
35 pounds empty. So a lot of muscle there. When I got there in the mid-90s, they were already trying to effect a transition because donuts are. Trying to effect a transition because donuts are very labor intensive, they spoil fast, and it's a really hard life. Intensive, they spoil fast, and it's a really hard life to make the donuts. So they were doing two things there. They were trying to create networks in their business and
works.
There, they were trying to create networks in their business instead of one and off mom and pop. In their business instead of one and off mom.
one on instead of one off. Let's see if I can fix this. There's a bunch of garbage in there. Instead of one.
One and off mom and.
That's instead of
one and off mom and.
Okay, instead of one off mom and. Oops. Ooh, I did something. Oh, see what I did there? I almost didn't drag these two together. Command Z is your friend because you can back up and go, wait a minute. One off.
In their business instead of one and off mom and pop shops so that they could.
One off mom and pop shops.
Mom and pop shop.
Okay, so.
Mom and pop shop.
Mom, pop, bleh. Mom and pop shops.
Instead of one and off mom and pop shops so that they could sort of centralize the production of products.
They could sort of
centralize. Sort of centralize. So that they could sort of centralize the production of product in central kitchens.
In central kitchen products in central kitchens.
Sort of centralized the production of product in central kitchens. And then the second thing they were doing was trying to effect a shift towards more emphasis on coffee, which was higher margin and way less labor intensive. Which was higher margin and way less labor intensive. And so I got.
Okay, a lot of mouth noise in there that I can cut out. Leave the gap because I think it needs it for transition.
Way less labor intensive. And so I got there in the middle of that shift. And so Fred shift and so I got there in the middle of that shift. And so Fred the baker, I got there in the middle of that shift. And so Fred the baker, being the time to make the donuts guy, was still doing commercials for us. And at some point they decided, still doing commercials for us. And at some point they decided, if we're really going to emphasize coffee, we need to not be led by the donuts guy. And it wasn't a cruel thing. It was the donuts guy. And it wasn't a.
Don't want to loop it. By the way, if you have any questions, non-existent live stream audience, go ahead and ask them in comments, and I'll be able to answer them in near real time.
We need to not be led by the donuts guy. And it wasn't a cruel thing. It was just an evolution of the brand. And so
you hear that click, that you can see it right there. Don't need it. Tighten it up a little bit, but not too much.
Just an evolution of the brand. And so to do this in a fun way.
So
brand. And so to do this in a fun way, in a way that our audience would not be upset, we threw Fred a audience would not be upset. We threw Fred a big retirement party.
Yeah, well, he was one of those.
He was one of those beloved.
Threw Fred a big retirement party.
He was one of those beloved mascot-like figures that people like me who grew up during the golden age of TV commercials I still, I think I probably this morning said.
Still, I think probably this morning. He's got a little tick there. Get rid of it. And the thing is, I'm pulling. I'm not, or I'm cutting back on this. I'm not actually moving the track, and that's a key thing.
During the golden age of TV commercials, I think I probably.
Okay, I still, I don't mind the I still, but I don't need the rest of that crap. I highlight all the stuff so I can move it forward. Maintaining sync between both tracks because you don't want to lose synchronization.
During the golden age of TV commercials, I think I probably this morning said to my wife, getting up out of bed, time to make the donuts. Because that's how I feel, I got to get up. Oh, time to make the donuts. But the other thing that Duncan.
Yeah, I had a little vocal tick thing. But the other thing.
Got to get up. Oh, time to make the donuts. But the other thing that Duncan was doing.
It's too tight.
Oh, time to make the donuts. But the other thing that Duncan was doing was it was reacting to a change. But the other thing that Duncan was doing was it was reacting to a changing marketplace where donuts are very carb heavy. I mean, talk about carbohydrate heavy foods. Is there anything? Carbohydrate heavy foods. Is there anything worse than donuts for people who drive past the Dunkin' Donuts on the way?
For people who
drive past the Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts.
So I get rid of that Dunkin' Donuts.
Donuts for people who drive past the Dunkin' Donuts on the way. Let me say that. Is there any more carb?
So what do I want to replace?
Dunkin' Donuts on the way. Let me say that. Is there any more carbohydrate dense food, especially?
So
is there?
I think I want to grab that whole thing and pull it forward. So where's the is there anything? Bingo. Just overwrite this stuff.
Where donuts are very carb heavy. I mean, talk about carbohydrate heavy foods. Is there anything worse than donuts for people who drive past the Dunkin' Donuts on the way?
What the heck?
Where donuts are very carb heavy. I mean, is there anything? Dunkin' Donuts on the way. Let me say that. Is there?
Okay, so there we go.
Where donuts are very carb heavy. I mean, talk about carbohydrate heavy foods. Is there any more carbohydrate dense food, especially to those people who might be driving past the Dunkin' Donuts store on the way to the health club?
Yeah, it is pretty.
Past the Dunkin' Donuts store on the way to the health club?
It is pretty amazingly carb intensive, and I actually.
Did you hear the breath? Right there. Yeah, once you become sensitized to it, you can visually see the breaths at the same time you're hearing it. So it's a nice confirmation.
It is pretty amazingly carb intensive, and I didn't eat that.
Okay, and I'm leaving in that right there because it's just too tight. Leaving an there again humanizes everything. And sometimes it's a nice reminder that not everything's perfect. So if I'm talking to you and I say, one of my favorite things about dogs is their tendency to crawl up in your lap. If I cut out that it takes some of the humanity out of it and makes it a little more too perfect. So one of the things when you're editing is you want to make sure that it always comes off as human, as personable, as immediate, and as, frankly, typically imperfect as humanity is. So don't cut out everything that might be an especially if the is married up with the word content. So the thing I like about dogs is the fact that they're the cutest thing. Leave that in there, because it adds flavor. It's like spice. You don't want to have too much of it because it gets too crazy. It's like cilantro, right? A little bit of cilantro is nice. A little bit too much is a little too much. You know what I'm saying? Of course you do. So let's go back to where we were. So here we are.
It is pretty amazingly carb intensive, and I didn't eat that many donuts when I was there because the access was unfettered. And if I had allowed myself in the 3 years I worked
she
there,
had a big sniff.
See
that sniff? Because this is an idea. I call it, if it is discrete, you can delete. Meaning, you see that gap there? That means there's dead air. There's dead air after. If there's dead air before and after, it is a discrete unit of audio. All you have to do is Command T, pull it back to after, and then tighten it up. And you will never know it was there because there's no type of, it's completely discrete. It's not connected to anything before and after.
If I had allowed myself in the 3 years I worked there to have a donut every day, I probably would have.
Did you hear that? Right there? Yep, I can see it. Same dang thing. Now, I might leave the breath in there because if I tighten everything up, it feels like people don't have time to breathe. And then it becomes, there's kind of something in your brain that makes you go, wait a minute, they aren't even breathing.
In the 3 years I worked there to have I had allowed myself in the 3 years I worked there to have a donut every day, I probably would have tripled in size.
Again, she must have a cold or allergies because I'm getting a lot of these sniffs. So I can be Zyrtec for her and make it easier for our listeners.
I probably would have tripled in size. But yes, you're right.
But yes, you're right. So I don't need this B, but yes, you're right.
I probably would have tripled in size. But yes, you're right. There were a number of trends going on in the marketplace, which of course are things that brands that really need to be conscious of. And one of them was the health trend. There were all sorts of diet.
Health trends. See that stuff right there? I think I need to get rid of it.
Was the health trend. There were
health trend. Let's say that's the D on trend. I can get rid of this stuff, but I'm leaving it in.
You need to be conscious of, and one of them was the health trend. There were all sorts of diet plans.
See that discrete point? I can just tighten it up, but not all the way, because it's a sentence change.
Conscious of, and one of them was the health trend. There were all sorts of diet plans coming out, Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers, and
breath and click. I don't know what this is, but let's see.
Not the South Beach diet.
And not the South Beach diet. Okay, she's searching for the diet she's thinking of. I'm going to leave in the searching.
Watchers and not the South Beach diet. The Atkins was the Atkins.
Okay, not the Atkins.
Watchers and not the South Beach diet. The Atkins was big at that time. So there were all these diets and
these breath click. There were all these diets.
was big at that time. So there were all these diets and a rising consciousness.
And a rising consciousness.
There were all these diets and a rising consciousness of health that made.
Okay, so did you hear that kind of a Zoom artifact? Because I use Zoom. Okay, so this is where I turn to this camera and I say, why do you occasionally hear some or some kind of robotic sounds or pixelated audio? Well, the answer is I'm recording this for free on Zoom because, again, I am cheap dad. And I could spend $15 a month on something like Squadcast, but here's the thing. I tried Squadcast, and it wasn't worth $15 a month to cheap dad when I can get 90+% of what Squadcast provides in terms of audio quality for free from Zoom. So, yeah, if I wanted to spend $15 a month every single month to get, and I'm not even sure what their pricing is anymore, but it just wasn't worth the extra little tiny bit of polish, because here's the thing. Squadcast is great if everyone that you are recording has a microphone like this and is aware of what good audio is and how it sounds, and consequently they have a quiet room that they're in and they are wearing headphones, so there is no bleed and stuff like that. But the reality is the people I have on my podcast have everything from a halfway decent microphone to a piece of crap in their laptop microphone they've got barking dogs upstairs or fans going on or ticking clocks, all that stuff. So if I had studio to studio quality sound, yeah, I would pay the extra money to get the absolute best sound. But because I don't have access to that on the side of the people that I'm having the audio recording, I'm not going to get pristine audio from them. So I'm trying to get the very best pristine version of their crap audio. How about I just take the crap audio that is 90+% as good as I could get from Squadcast and not pay $15 a month? You got to know you're going to get quality before you can ask me to spend $15 a month for a 2% better audio. Sorry. And that's another edition of, my God, you're cheap, DP. But yeah, I kind of am. I judge whether I'm going to get a significant return on that investment before I make that investment, which is why this microphone is a Shure Beta 87, I think, I'm not sure which one I'm using here now, but it's a $140 microphone. I'm not using my ATR 2100, which is an $80 microphone. Now, I use that for guests when they come over to my house and we record live, but I spend the money on the stuff that I know makes a difference. And in this case, because I've got my laptop right in front of me, the fans are going crazy running Ecamm Live to do this live stream. I need a microphone that will cut out the fan noise by not recording anything behind the microphone capsule. And consequently, I'm using a dynamic microphone made by one of the best, sound and audio companies in the world, Shure, based in Skokie, Illinois, not too far from where I live. And that's where I'm going to put the money. Put the money in the microphone for me, not in trying to get a 2% better sound quality on someone else's crappy mic. Make sense? It does in my world. Okay, moving back. Well, let's continue. Enough of the editorial.
Rising consciousness of health that made.
Okay, did you hear that? Right there. I can cut it out. Just back up a little bit.
Rising consciousness of health that made donuts a lot less attractive to the average.
Okay. Hear that?
Active to the.
Okay, it's just some weird audio weirdness here.
Made donuts a lot less attractive to the average person. We still.
So we got a breath, an and a tick. So what can I do? I just go to a piece of clean air, get rid of the breath, the and the tick. Tighten it up, not 100%, but close.
To the average person. We still had our heavy users and people were.
We still had our heavy users.
The average person. We still had our heavy users and people were very loyal to that, but it was going to be a shrinking.
But don't need two butts. Heavy users don't need two butts. Get it?
And people were very loyal to that, but it was going to be a shrinking population. And so that was, as you mentioned, another factor into why they wanted to shift away from donuts and have a coffee drive business. And then there were.
So breath, tick. She has an audio tell that occurs more than once in this podcast, so I'm starting to recognize it.
Away from donuts and have a coffee drive business. And then there were competitive things that were going on in the market.
Competitive
things that were going on.
That's kind of weird to have the V out there on its own, so I'm going to tighten that up because see this? This is her competitive V.
And then there were competitive things that were going on in the marketplace also. You know, Starbucks was a lot smaller then, but ramping up very, very fast.
Ramping up very, very fast.
Very fast. And I'll talk about something that.
And I'll. I'll talk about as opposed to and I'll talk about.
Very fast. And I'll talk about something that wasn't in the blog post that was very interesting, sort of an insider behind the view. But Duncan.
See, breath, tick. She didn't have an in there. So breath, tick. Didn't do the so good for her, but I got that tick out of there. That
sort of an insider behind the view. But Duncan went through a couple of years.
Went through a couple of years.
Duncan went through a couple of years while I was there of a bit of an identity crisis.
I need to leave that in there. A bit of identity crisis.
Of a bit of an identity crisis themselves. It wasn't an adolescent crisis because they had been in business at that point by 40 years. But
by 40 years, so that's the guessing. Get rid of the and I just tighten it up by 40 years.
It's because they had been in business at that point by 40 years. But
breath. Yes, you may not have heard it, but I did because, again, once you do this enough, you began to almost anticipate that the breaths are going to happen.
At that point by 40 years. But by virtue of these major competitors coming on, they had a moment of, well, who exactly are we? You know?
Little tick. Oops. Let's grab both of these. Keep things in sync. And
Starbucks has
that up. Who are we? And
exactly are we? You know? And Starbucks has and Starbucks, as your listeners may know, was inspired by Howard Schultz going to Italy and
see that It's discreet, so I'm gonna delete. Discreet. Delete.
By Howard Schultz going to Italy and looking at the Italian coffee houses and saying, wow, this is such a great place to meet. I want Starbucks.
Hear that breath? And again, I wish I could noise gate this out. But I do that, and all of a sudden I'm gonna lose all the on H or the ramping up S on snake or silver. So I don't want to noise gate too much.
Saying, wow, this is such a great place to meet. I want Starbucks to be that third place. You're working home and you have somewhere else. Home and you have somewhere. Be that third place. You're working home and you have somewhere else to go and socialize and be and feel comfortable. And so,
okay, so that whole chunk of umness and tick can go away. Leave a gap.
socialize and be and feel comfortable. And so Duncan was like, should we be a neighborhood coffee shop?
Should we be in?
Should we be a neighborhood coffee? Neighborhood coffee.
So that kind of weird hiccup in there, get rid of it. Should we be a neighborhood coffee house?
Duncan was like, should we neighborhood coffee?
Ooh, be a. So.
Neighborhood coffee.
All right, be a neighborhood. Should we be a neighborhood?
Duncan was like, should we be a neighborhood coffee? Neighborhood coffee shop.
Okay, let's just do this. Neighborhood coffee shop.
Be a neighborhood coffee.
See if I butt these up all close together. Should we be a neighborhood?
And so Duncan was like, should we be a neighborhood coffee shop? And there was definitely some conversation about that. But
this, but
that. But from a consumer insight.
but from a consumer.
Definitely some conversation about that. But from a consumer insights point of view, once they start asking their consumer, right? That's what we were talking about last week.
Did you hear that click right there? That, get rid of that click. Let's see.
But from a consumer insights point of view, once they start asking their consumer, right? That's what we were talking about last week on the attributes. What people were saying is,
there it is again. Breath, tick, in this case, and I think maybe a little bit more than that. Take out all that garbage. Make it more pleasant to listen to.
last week on the attributes, what people were saying is,
What? Nope. Just what? Yeah.
talking about last week on the attributes, what people were saying is,
Attributes?
talking about last week on the attributes, what people were saying is, Duncan is the way I treat myself. Saying is, Duncan is the way.
Hear that?
Duncan is the.
Cut it out. I'm not going to bring the stuff together because I like the rhythm of it.
Attributes. What people were saying is, Duncan is the way I treat myself. Duncan is where I fuel in the morning.
Duncan is where I fuel in.
Duncan is the way I treat myself. Duncan is where I fuel in the morning. Duncan is where I recharge. And you look at their tagline today, America runs on Duncan. That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So
I think I might cut my out. It's nice to remind listeners that I'm alive, but Let's do this. Sometimes I cheat the reaction a little bit forward because you can see she talks, yeah, back into her.
Runs on Duncan. That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So there's
And there's an that actually helps because she's got an here.
and that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So there's that self-knowledge.
Yeah, so there's
From.
Yeah.
So there's that self-knowledge.
So there's that self-knowledge.
There's that self-knowledge. Duncan, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So there's that self-knowledge, and sometimes when competition comes in, it
and
knowledge, and sometimes when
and whoop. Up like
there's that self-knowledge, and sometimes when competition.
Ooh, that was knowledge.
So there's that self-knowledge, and sometimes when
Self-knowledge.
Self-knowledge, and sometimes when
I think I got to get rid of this and because it's actually clean. Knowledge and.
So there's that self-knowledge, and sometimes when competition comes.
All right, knowledge and.
There's that self-knowledge, and sometimes when competition comes in, it forces you to sharpen your view of where you are.
Well, and let me tell you, I have a friend, and we like to joke about. And let me tell you, I have a friend, and we like to joke about this. He prefers Dunkin'. And we like to joke about this. He prefers Dunkin' Donuts coffee to Starbucks. He prefers Dunkin' Donut coffee to Starbucks. He won't go to Starbucks ever because he's a Dunkin' Donuts coffee guy. And yeah, I know that.
Okay, so there's a breath in here. Cut it out.
Dunkin' Donuts coffee guy. And yeah, I know that there are other things, but guy. And yeah, I know that there are other things, but it really comes down to the fact that he doesn't view himself as a Starbucks person. He views himself as a little bit more feet on the ground, a little bit more down to earth, a little less yuppie, and a little bit more blue collar. A little bit more blue collar, even though he's a white collar worker. He still has the associations, the brand attributes that he prefers are best exemplified by Dunkin' Donuts. So consequently, he'll get Dunkin' coffee. And by the way, Dunkin' Donuts is getting rid of the donuts part of their brand name in a lot of test areas. And I think that's going to go nationwide, isn't it?
Oh, it did already.
Just want to keep them in sync. Tighten that up. You can see this down here. This is a buffer track that I use so I can grab stuff easily. And I have an old promo in there just in case I ever want to use it again. But it doesn't play because it is muted.
Areas, and I think that's going to go nationwide, isn't it?
Oh, it did already. And actually, I wrote a blog post about a year and a half ago. I think they. And actually, I wrote a blog post about a year and a half ago. I think they changed their name officially to Duncan.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of there.
And
there.
And there was a lot.
Name officially to Duncan.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of there was actually a newscaster.
Tick. Get rid of the tick. There was actually a newscaster.
There was actually a newscaster online who in the middle of a online
Who keep up who
actually a newscaster who in the middle
who
in the middle actually a newscaster who in the middle of announcing this was who in the middle of announcing this was
in the middle of
announcing this was really a newscaster who in the middle of announcing this was really upset. A lot of people in the New England area who had decades of heritage with the brand were really upset about that. You know, for me,
really upset about that. You know, for me,
upset about that. You know, for me personally, having worked there, nobody said don't. You know, for me personally, having worked there, nobody said
a little too tight.
Personally, having worked there, nobody said Dunkin' Donuts. We always referred to it as Dunkin'. So for me, it was not an effort at all to.
I think it has a little bit.
So for me, it was not an effort at all.
I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that some people may have thought that donuts were canceled in modern terminology, you know, that you're canceled in modern terminology, you know, that you're canceling donuts. In modern terminology, you know, that you're canceling donuts because
that you're canceling donuts.
Modern terminology, you know, that you're canceling donuts because they're not healthy, and you know the global elites who live on the coast are telling us, especially here in I'm in Wisconsin, by the way. I'm in Wisconsin.
Okay, so there's a breath there.
Coasts are telling us, especially here in I'm in Wisconsin, by the way.
I'm in Wisconsin, but here in Wisconsin.
Coasts are telling us, especially here in I'm in Wisconsin, by the way. The coasts are telling us, especially here in I'm in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, by the way. Wisconsin, by the way.
So I hear it.
Wisconsin, by the way.
So
telling us, especially here in Wisconsin, by the way.
Wisconsin. Here in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, by the way. By the way. And by the way.
So I need the... in Wisconsin.
On the coast are telling us, especially here in Wisconsin, we love our Dunkin' Donut.
I got to keep all that stuff in there. It's kind of a mess, but...
Leads who live on the coast are telling us, especially here in... I'm in Wisconsin, by the way.
I'm in Wisconsin, by the way.
Global elites who live on the coast are telling us, especially here in... I'm in Wisconsin, by the way. We love our Dunkin' Donuts, with more donuts, and even more donuts. So I can understand how...
Rid of that breath in there. It's kind of a mess, but I think it actually happened the way it was said. So I think I kind of have to leave it in there.
Elites who live on the coast are telling us, especially here in... I'm in Wisconsin, by the way. We love our Dunkin' Donuts, with more donuts, and even more donuts. So I can understand how middle America or traditionally oriented people might take umbrage to that because, say it with me, people, you're messing with their brand. Because as you said last week, you can own your brand, but you are only a part owner. And I'm putting my own words because I use this same thing in your brand, but you are only a part owner. And I'm putting my own words because I use this same thing in my presentations where I say, you can own your own words because I use this same thing in my presentations where I say, you can own your logo. It's because I use this same thing in my presentations where I say, you can own your logo. I use this same thing in my presentations where I say, you can own your logo according to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. You can own your copyright. But guess who owns your brand right alongside you? Your customers and your employees. Because if they don't agree with what you're doing, they can kill you very, very quickly. And that brings us into one of the examples you used in your blog post that we talked about last week, Polaroid. Now, I use Kodak when I do a presentation, but when I do a in your blog post that we talked about last week, Polaroid. Now, I use Kodak when I do a presentation, but it's the same thing, which is these guys were innovators in imaging. Especially Polaroid was instant. Innovators in imaging. Especially Polaroid was instant imaging. Well,
Especially.
Innovators in imaging. Especially Polaroid was instant imaging. Well, relatively instant, shake it like a Polaroid picture. You still had to wait a little bit, but compared to having to take it to a photo mat, to remind people old enough of a brand that existed way back, and wait 3 weeks to get it processed. Way back, and wait 3 weeks to get it processed or whatever. Polaroid was and wait 3 weeks to get it processed or whatever. Polaroid was instant photography. Kodak owned imaging. Instant photography. Kodak owned imaging for was instant photography. Kodak owned imaging for a...
All right, so let's need a little separation there. It's kind of running together. Back.
Polaroid was instant photography. Kodak owned imaging for a century. They invented digital imaging, but they lost their brand when they learned that they loved to sell film. They lost their brand when they learned that they loved to sell film more than they did innovate in the imaging space. Same thing with Polaroid. Boom. Now they're a shadow of themselves.
I don't need that boom. That's obnoxious.
Same thing with Polaroid. Now they're a shadow of themselves.
Oh, they totally are a shadow of themselves. It's so heartbreaking because they were such a salt of the earth kind of brand, and because they were such a salt of the earth kind of brand, and those instant cameras, which still exist in some iteration today. There's a group, I forget what they're called. There's a group, forget.
Got some breathiness in here. Forget what they're called.
Hey, there's a
I gotta check these for breaths here.
And and those instant cameras, which still exist in some iteration today. There's a group, I forget what they're called. There was some group that went in that.
There's a group, some group. The group.
Iteration today. There's a group, some group that went and actually figured out how to manufacture them again, and so you. That went and actually figured out how to manufacture them again, and so you. Some group that went and actually figured out how to manufacture them again, and so you can actually find a Polaroid branded instant. A Polaroid brand. Polaroid branded in.
You can actually.
And so you can actually find Polaroid branded. Actually find a Polaroid brand.
You can actually find a Polaroid branded.
Manufacture them again, and so you can actually find a Polaroid branded instant camera, but it's not the what it was, and
Not.
the what it was, and
It's not what it was.
instant camera, but it's not what it was, and back in the day, And by the way, I am old. What it was, and back in the day. By the way, I am old enough to remember when, you could. I am old enough to remember when, you could suddenly get film I am old enough to remember when, you could suddenly get film process.
When you could suddenly.
Enough to remember when, you could suddenly get film processed in an hour, and it was a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge deal. Let me tell you, you young.
And out of the way. Grandpa goes into his tirade.
Let me tell you, you young kids with your iPhones and your JPEGs. Let me tell you. But it's true. Times change. In the case of Kodak specifically, they invented. if you looked into the intellectual property, they invented, if you looked into the,
They invented, get rid of that one weird hump noise in there. Figure out what it is. Invented.
specifically, they invented, if you looked into the intellectual property that's in,
They invented.
Specifically, they invented, if you looked into the,
Yeah. They invented it.
they invented, if you looked into the intellectual property that's in your smartphone, a lot of those patents that's in your smartphone, a lot of those patents are owned by the Eastman Kodak company. And that's why they still exist as a company, frankly, to just take those licensing fees from Apple, from Samsung, from all the companies that are now owning imaging. But it's so sad because why did Kodak But it's so sad because why did Kodak specifically stop adhering to their culture of innovation? Because they got lost in the fact that they were selling a lot of film and they didn't want to see film go away. If we really promote this digital photography thing and that doesn't require film, that's going to kill us as a company. No, it's going to save you as a company, but they learned that too late. Well, I don't think they learned it ever, to be honest.
All right, so I'm going to be looking for a place to put my commercial, which is right there. And actually, I might have to edit this commercial, so because it's too long. I just feel like it's too long. I want to go through it and listen to it.
Well, I don't think they learned it ever, to be honest.
No. And so the other thing that, this kind of, this kind of lead, it, and so the other thing that, this kind of leads to, which I'm betting, the other thing that, this kind of leads to, which I'm betting we're aligned with, and we just
Betting world.
thing that, this kind of leads to, which I'm betting we're aligned with, and we just met, but I have this feeling that you're, but I have, which I'm betting we're aligned with, and we just met, but I have this feeling that you're of the same. I have this feeling.
It up a little bit.
I'm betting we're aligned with, and we just met, but I have this feeling that you're of the same mindset. Is when you talk about a brand's purpose, the reason they're on earth, a good brand purpose. A good brand purpose, the reason they're on earth. A good brand purpose is its purpose, the reason they're on earth. A good brand purpose is it's going to last you decades. And so by that definition, it's going to last you decades. And so by that definition, it's not product driven. That neither Polaroid nor it's not product driven, that definition, it's not product driven. You know, that neither Polaroid nor Kodak was in the film business, right? They were in the memory business or the instant memory business. The memory business or the instant memory business or the, collecting of, or the instant memory business or the, collecting of, they failed to see, collecting of,
Two knows in a row, got to get rid of one of them.
instant memory business or the collecting of, they failed to see.
I'm going to leave in the two theys.
They failed to see that was
that breath.
Of, they failed to see that was their purpose on earth and the reason that people went to their brands, right? Yes, the film quality might have been great, and they may have had a yes, the film quality might have been great, and they may have had a nostalgic affiliation after using. They have had a nostalgic.
Get rid of that first.
And they may have had a nostalgic affiliation after using them for years. But the truth was they affiliation after using them for years. But the truth was they using them for years. But the truth was they reached for them when they wanted to they reached for them when they wanted to capture and save a memory. And so wanted to capture and save a memory. And so by taking their eye off the ball of how will people want to keep capturing memories, and I'm using capturing memories. And I'm using one angle, maybe they had a different angle, but they took their maybe they had a different angle, but they took their eye off this longer term purpose of why people came to them, and stuck with a purpose of why people came to them and stuck with a product that was dying.
Well, if you want to see.
All right, this is a good place for the commercial because I go into my spiel about the best pitch ever in the history of mankind, and it was on Mad Men for the Carousel. Remember the Carousel episode? Oh my God, so good. Bad. Oh, so let's do this. Since I've been wanting to do this for a while, I'm going to save this. I'm going to get out of here because I want to go to my promo. Oh, Lordy. Bit of this so I can look here. Where is it? Promos for podcast. Book promo. J-Bear blurb or episode. J-Bear blurb band. I want the J-Bear blurb. I'm going to re-edit this episode. Or this promo. Come on, where are you? Is it hidden by something? quit out of it. Reopen it. Might be behind. There we go. So I'm going to kill all the music parts.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are, now available on Amazon.com. Too many people for too many years have labored.
I want to go. Jay Bear calls it. Where is that?
Outline the tenets of a new concept. But with this book and a little bit of work, that opportunity is 100% yours. Jay Bear, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding, highly recommended, a spectacularly useful guide to personal branding that pulls off the difficult trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must-read, regardless of where you are in your own brand-building journey. To get your copy,
I just might want to... That's the Jay Bear stuff. Copy, just make sure.
Jay Bear, bestseller.
Ooh, actually, I want to do this. I want to do a save as. I want to save as this whole dang thing so I don't mess stuff up. What are we going to call this? Jay Bear blurb short. How about that? Bingo. Now I'm not going to mess stuff up. Copy that. And actually, I'm going to chop that out. So
have labored in obscurity.
All
Why?
that labored in...
Because that's the way it's always been. Work for someone else and remain nameless, letting up too many people for too many...
Okay, that whole too many people crap. Gonna cut that right there. Grab everything after it and pull it back so that I can go, bingo, Jay Bear stuff. Let's see how that sounds.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are, now available on Amazon.com. Jay Bear, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding, highly recommended, a spectacularly useful guide to personal branding that pulls off the difficult trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must-read, regardless of where you are in your own brand-building journey. To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are."
Now, let's make it that short, because all this blah, blah, blah is not needed. Now I got to mess with the audio or all the music. And one of the cool things about GarageBand is if you have any musical ability at all or can listen and hear things, you can create your own custom music tracks free. That's another cheap dad thing. Because I am a cheap dad, I don't want to have to pay even $25 for a piece of music from Pond 5 or one of the other providers of stock music. So instead, I created my own using loops that come in free with GarageBand. Let me show you what I'm talking about right here. So in GarageBand, you can see I've got just some loops I grabbed that allow me to do something like this. So this is my promo music for this. So this goes throughout. Well, now I got to shorten this thing. Cool thing about it is I can shorten it simply by doing this. And this is a rough shortening, so I actually need to do that. That. Pull this out. Don't. And my cymbal hit right there is strictly so I can have a nice sting at the end. Except it's going to be on 3, so let's see what that sounds like.
Journey. To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Bump-a-dum-bump. So we'll put that on 4. This is a 4/4 thing. Dun-da-dum. Right there. Dum-dum. And then let's see where. I'm going to drag all this back here. Dum-ba-dum. Boom. Boom. This is all my automation. Get that. Dun-da-dun-dun. Let's hear it.
Trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must read, regardless of where you are in your own brand building journey. To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Dum-da-dum-dum. Well, it's got to be on 4. Okay. Dum-da-dum-dum. All this stuff. Forward. So, I think I can. Oop. Dum-da-dum-dum. So on 4, that has a nice punch. Back a little.
Completely true, completely you brand you already are.
You already are. So what I can do is space out. Come back a little bit with that. Everything back. See what this sounds like.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are, now available on Amazon.com. Jay Baer, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding. Highly recommended. A spectacular..."
Okay, that outstanding. Highly recommended.
Jay Baer, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding. Highly recommended. A spectacularly useful guide to personal branding that pulls off the difficult trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must-read, regardless of where you are in your own brand-building journey." To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Boom, ba-dum, dum. I think I want to take this Y out.
completely you brand you already are. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Walk, chaka. Or, well.
And you already are.
Sounded right. Oh. Let's just double check what's happening on my voice track. Value time. EQ could be vintage vocal high cut. Let's solo my track.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand.
I don't like that.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is... This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you...
I could bring...
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true... This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true...
All right, let's try that. That. Tighten up. I'm going to move the envelope. This just shows you the active area that is going to be
the completely true, completely you brand you already are. The credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Crosstown disco guitar. Let's bring up the bass.
Completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Doom, ba-doom, doom. All right, let's do this. I'm going to share this, export song to disk. It'll ask me where it wants to go. I'm putting it in promo land, book promo. Yep. Make sure it's off as short. Yeah, I'll leave the date crap on there. AIFF, export. Gonna shut this down. Quit out of here because I'm going to. Episode. Okay, Bear Blurb short. I'm going to open it in Audacity because this is how I do my final pass of finishing for all my podcasts. So you can see right there, this is what the waveform looks like. Let's see. First thing I'm going to do is I can't tighten it up, but I can do this. I can compress this. See what happens? Bingo. Listen. Ooh. Sorry, let's do this. You guys should be able to hear this. No, it doesn't. All right, well, anyway, I am going to then do one other thing, which is loudness normalization, which will, bingo, cause that to happen. And I might as well export this as, let's see what happens if I export it as a WAV file to right folder, promos for podcast, promo, save it as a WAV, and the WAV is what I'm going to pull into GarageBand. And I'm going to reopen GarageBand. But I'm going to W out of there. Instead, I'm going to open existing project. Make sure I'm at the right place, which is Ellen Star, episode 140. Open that bad boy up. And now I'm going to move this up over here onto my buffer track, which instantly means it's not going to play. And from here, I'm going to open up a Finder file, podcast folder, promos, podcast, book promo. I'm going to look for that WAV file, that short WAV file. See what happens. Drag this. Come on, baby. Aren't you letting me drag you? Dang it. Try this file. I want to drag.
This episode.
And I drag and place it right there, roughly. It'll convert it to whatever it needs to be. And then move this stuff. Tail. See how this sounds.
But they took their eye off this longer term purpose of why people came to them and stuck with a product that was dying.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are, now available on Amazon.com. Jay Baer, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding, highly recommended. A spectacularly useful guide to personal branding that pulls off the difficult trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must-read, regardless of where you are in your own brand-building journey." To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are.
Well, if you want to see exactly what a brand master understands about why people would go to, in this case, Kodak specifically.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book.
With a product that was dying.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, already are.
Well, if you...
All right, so that needs to be tightened. Well, actually, let's do this. Well, no. Go like that.
New brand you already are. If you want to see
Bingo.
exactly what a brand master understands about why people would go to, in this case, Kodak specifically, all you have to do is check out an episode of Mad Men called The Carousel and watch that episode, and you will see called The Carousel and watch that episode, and you will see at the end of a pitch your own eyes tearing up because you realize, I'm not buying film. I'm not buying film processing.
I want to take her yeah and move it. And here's the thing, you don't move it exactly between stuff because there needs to be some thinking time for them to agree with you.
Because you realize, I'm not buying film.
Right.
I'm not buying film processing. I'm not buying convenience. I'm not buying,
Convenience.
I'm not.
Okay, so right after that, convenience is a breath. I want to see what level. My noise gate is at 37, so I can tighten this up. 34, not there. 35 is there, so 34. Just tighten it up a little bit. Yeah. All right, noise gating is an art. And if you want to talk about that, go ahead and ask a question in real time because that's why I'm here doing this. Well, frankly, I'm doing it. Why do I do these things live? That's a good question. No one's ever asked it, but I'm going to give you an answer anyway. Why do I do it? One, I have to be doing this anyway, so why not do it live? Two, it gives me incredible practice in live streaming, talking to a camera and to an audience that isn't even there because most of the time I do this, I have 0 viewers, which is fine with me because this is about practice. Because here's one of the things, like all these ums that I'm taking out on Evelyn's track, no offense to Evelyn, but I can tell she doesn't podcast, nor does she appear on podcasts a lot, because if she did, she would be aware of just how many times she says in a sentence or a paragraph or a conversation. You'll notice right there, in the past, I would have said and then gone on to something else. I don't, because I've cut out so many ums in editing not only her track, but my track, that I've become very concerned and sensitized to the number of times I say The other spacer words I use are so, well, you say those things enough, and all of a sudden you realize, I don't want to be someone like that. An example would be, I did this yesterday for something else, and the person who I had recorded said like a 20-year-old. This is not an offense to 20-year-olds. It is the fact that a ton of 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 14-year-olds, whatever, they'll put in like in a single sentence 5 times. Like, what are you going to have for lunch? Like, maybe a hamburger? Like, or maybe like some ketchup and pickles? Like, all those likes have to go. You can have maybe one like in a sentence, and ideally it's a sentence that is something like, I like Coca-Cola more than Pepsi. Not like, do you like Coke like as much as like you like Pepsi like? All those likes have to go. So practicing to an audience of nobody is actually not a waste of time. The other thing is, all this kind of knowledge about how to use audio and stuff like that, I've acquired the best way you can, which is firsthand, do it yourself. DIY DP, that's me, man. Do it yourself DP. Don't hire anyone to teach you. Learn how to do it. And the thing is, there are enough teachers online already on YouTube. You can learn everything you need to know about podcasting, microphones, audio, lighting, cameras. All this stuff I learned by doing it myself via the very generous teachers of YouTube. So that's why I do this. I have to do it anyway, every Saturday. Might as well do it live and learn how to present myself without having ums every 2 seconds. How to look into a camera lens, not down here the whole time. Now, I'm doing that, of course, down here as I edit because I have to see my editing screen. But when I'm talking to you personally, it's eye contact, baby. I want you to know I care. I care so much about you. That's why I look so lovingly into the camera lens. Are you having a good day? Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, well, that's life, right? But here's the thing about life. You can fake it on a live stream. Just saying. Let's get back to work, shall we? All right, so let's... I'm feeling good. Let me listen back to that commercial placement since I have mildly fresh ears.
Took their eye off this longer term purpose of why people came to them and stuck with a product that was dying.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by my new book, Nonfiction Brand. Discover, craft, and communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are, now available on Amazon.com. Jay Baer, best-selling author of Talk Triggers, said, "The book is outstanding, highly recommended. A spectacularly useful guide to personal branding that pulls off the difficult trick of being both realistic and inspirational. A must-read, regardless of where you are in your own brand-building journey." To get your copy, head on over to Amazon.com and search Nonfiction Brand. And let's get you all the credit you deserve for the completely true, completely you brand you already are. If you want to see exactly...
See? All right, that works.
I'm not buying film processing. I'm not buying convenience. I'm not buying, imaging. I'm buying my children when they were little and I loved them and they would still call me daddy instead of roll their eyes at me now that they're teenagers and they're going to college and I'm never going to see them again and they better have grandchildren really soon. I mean, seriously, that's the product that Kodak and Polaroid were actually selling. And it goes back to what we said last week, which is don't get stuck in understanding what your title is or what you technically do.
Okay, so that gap's a little long, and I know that during my post-processing on this, I'm going to use a thing called truncate silence just to tighten things up a little bit, but some of the big gaps, like I didn't close up this gap here, because I know truncate silence will just shorten it by 40%, but that gap was a little too long.
Don't get stuck in understanding what your title is or what you technically do. Understand what people want to engage with you for.
Okay, that was a little tortured. So I'm going to help out that speaker.
Understand what people want to engage.
So want to engage with you for. You'll notice that I shrink the track or expand the track out frequently, and I can do it really easily. How do you do that? With a Magic Trackpad. This is an Apple Magic Trackpad, which I paid for myself. Cheap dad forked out. I think these are the new versions that are rechargeable via a USB-C port. I think these run about $125, something like that. And why would cheap dad replace the one that he already had? Well, because it's cordless, it's up to date, and it's rechargeable very, very easily. And it's super easy to do the pinch and shrink technique that you've come to know and love based on your smartphone. So that's how I go zoom in, zoom out very, very quickly.
People want to engage with you for. In my case, I like to provoke people into thinking twice or 3 times, 4 times, so that they go, oh, oh, oh.
So they go, oh, oh,
Oh, oh, oh. If I don't get that response from people, I feel I've personally failed. And from what you've been talking about, Evelyn, you like people to go, wow, that's really well thought through. And I believe it because you said it. And I feel confident. So I'm buying confidence, trustworthiness, and diligence and intelligence when I engage with Evelyn Starr. Am I overstating what you sell for yourself?
Well, I don't present it into that.
For yourself?
All right, let's shorten up her astounded. Wow, that was nice of you to say, David. But that's kind of what she was doing.
Stating what you sell for yourself?
Well, I don't present it into that way to people, but yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And it, I don't have provocateur. Exactly what it is. And it, I don't.
So that again, getting rid of the ums makes your guest sound smarter. That's a huge reason for doing it.
That way to people, but yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And it, I don't have provocateur. People, but yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And it, I don't have provocateur as my adjective, but what often happens. But what often happens.
But what often happens is,
as my adjective, but what often happens because I have a strategy and insights background is that I often.
Did you hear that tick breath right there? Get rid of it.
Insights background is that I often give them an aha moment. It was something they didn't. Aha moment. It was something they didn't see. It was, their product was selling for some reason they couldn't understand, and I can unearth that for them.
A breath right there. Now, again, I would do what I did on her noise gate that I did to mine, but it's already pretty darn sensitive.
They couldn't understand, and I can unearth that for them. So
instead, I have to, unfortunately, cut out her little breath ticks like that by hand, but
unearth that for them. So I bring the.
But I'm doing it with the ums anyway, and it's funny. The breaths tend to hang out with the ums. So if you're cutting out one, you might as well cut out the other.
I can unearth that for them. So I bring the intelligence and the trustworthiness, and they, I actually had a client.
Did you hear that? Yeah. Get rid of the breath.
Oh, I bring the intelligence and the trustworthiness, and they, I actually had a client say to me, if I had you research. Actually had a client say to me, if I had.
Say to me?
Client say to me.
So said?
Say to me. Say to me.
Okay, so say. I have had a client say to me. So say. Get rid of the said. She was correcting her tense, which I appreciate. I actually had a client say to me.
I actually had a client say to me.
I'd say?
Say to me.
I actually had a client say to me.
I actually had a client say to me.
What is it here?
Say to me.
Ooh.
I actually had a client say to me.
See? I actually had a client say to me,
if I had you research this, you would get to the bottom of it. I just know it.
Yeah.
And that's
all right, so I'm going to move. Move that just up here in a little bit clearer zone.
you research this, you would get to the bottom of it. I just know it.
Yeah.
And that's why they come to me.
And that's why they come to me. Don't need it twice.
Just know it.
Yeah.
And that's why they come to me. It's like, I know if I engage with you, I'm going to find out the answer.
And consequently, you don't stop until you find an answer that is going to make them go, that is so simple. Answer that is going to make them go, that is so simple. And it was right in front of my face, and I never saw it. It's like
Right.
Disneyland.
Okay, so put her right.
And I never saw it.
Right.
It's like Disneyland or Disney World.
I'm going to take my... Oops, sorry. Pull it back a little.
And I never saw it.
Right.
It's like Disneyland or Disney.
It's it's like...
Never saw it.
Right.
It's like Disneyland or Disney World, the happiest place on earth. No, it's not. Half the time it's way too hot. It's way too crowded. Place on earth. No, it's not. Half the time it's way too hot. It's way too crowded. It's way too expensive. And yet every one of your family, especially if you have children, too crowded. It's way too expensive. And yet every one of your family, especially if you have children, you'll talk about especially if you have children, you'll talk about that trip the rest of your life and how it was so funny when you spilled the ice cream on yourself and mom got scared of the thing. And funny when you spilled the ice cream on yourself and mom got scared of the thing and the ride. And remember when Billy sat on, or we have a family story, which thing and the ride. And remember when scared of the thing and the ride and you sat on, or we have a family story, which we have a family.
Oop, dang it. And is it right there?
Or we have a family. And mom got scared of the thing and the ride. Or we have a family story, which I'm not going to say which daughter, but one of our very little daughters sat on Ariel's lap and threw up on her. Sat on Ariel's lap. her, but one of our very little daughters sat on Ariel's lap and threw up on her. And that is a family story that will be coming out at the engagement party when she does get engaged. And we're going to laugh our butts off because it occurred at Disneyland. Couldn't happen anyplace else. The happiest place on earth. And we're all going to have those memories.
That's true. But, I want to,
And we're all going to have those memories.
That's true. But, I want to relate this to something we were talking about before, last week with the attributes and how those are in the eye of the beholder to an extent. Disney, when eye of the beholder to an extent, Disney, when I was a kid, meant, weekly movies and a break from things and a lot of joy. And yes, we went to Disney World, I think when I was 13. So I have a younger brother and sister. World, I think when I was 13. So I have a younger brother and sister. So we had to wait till everybody was old enough to handle a day there, which younger brother and sister. So we had to wait till everybody was old enough to handle a day there, which
just tighten it up. Oop, sorry, you've been looking at me staring at a screen. That's kind of boring.
I have a younger brother and sister, so we had to wait till everybody was old enough to handle a day there, which is, quite a lot. As a parent, quite a lot. As a parent,
let's leave that back there a little bit.
Quite a lot. As a parent, my kids started clamoring to go to Disney. I looked at it completely differently, and the brand changed in my mind. I looked at it completely differently. The brand changed in my mind.
Grab both. Don't lose synchronization. The worst thing that can ever happen.
Disney. I looked at it completely differently. The brand changed in my mind. I mean, I was the one leading the trip, and when you go to Disney World, it may be the happiest place on earth, but to me, it involves a military operation. Happiest place on earth, but to me, it involves a military operation level of planning to get through and level of planning to get through and do what you want to do in a reasonable amount of time and make sure you have reservations. Amount of time and make sure
you see that big breath right there. Yeah, deep breathing is the biggest thing, but I think kind of important thing you can do to make the podcast sound better for your listeners.
In a reasonable amount of time and make sure you have reservations because everything gets so booked up. So it's, it's changed. Because everything gets so booked up. So it's, it's changed. Because everything gets so booked up. So it's, it's changed in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Believe me, when I took my family there, we did the counterclockwise route where everyone goes to the right. We went to the left all the way to the back of the park because then we can hit all the. We did the counterclockwise.
It's not counterclockwise. We did the clockwise route. This is one of the best reasons to edit your podcast. To correct things you mistakenly say.
When I took my family there, we did the clockwise route where everyone goes to the right. We went to the left all the way to the back of the park. We went to the left all the way to the back of the park because then we can One goes to the right, we went to the left, all the way to the back of the park, because then we can hit all the big rides. We went to the left, all the way to the back of the park, because then we can hit all the big rides very quickly and do them twice in a row before everyone catches up. And then we had lunch planned. Yeah, it was military precision, but that's because I wanted them. Yeah, it was military precision, but that's because I wanted them to get what I got, which was the most fun, the most rides, the most everything out of that thing. And consequently, those memories are not going away. And consequently, those memories are not going away ever. And, you know, I believe me, I don't go to Disney.
Believe me, I don't go to Disney.
These are not going away ever. Believe me, I don't go.
Yep. Keep the sync.
Memories are not going away ever. Believe me, I don't go to Disney because I like spending that much money. Memories are not going away ever. Believe me, I don't go to Disney because I like spending that much money or sitting out there in Florida and sweating my everything off, you know. There in Florida and sweating my everything off, you know. But let me tell you, I know what their product is. It's not the weather.
No.
I think we're coming toward the end. It's not the weather. No.
Product is. It's not the weather.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So
they do bring a lot of joy.
Yeah. So tell us about product is. It's not the weather.
No.
Yeah. So tell us about the book. It's coming. Yeah. So tell us about book. It's coming out.
Tell us about book. No, tell us about the. Tell us about the book.
Yeah. So tell us about the book. It's coming out sometime toward the end of. Sometime.
Sometime.
Yeah. So tell us about the book. It's coming out sometime toward the end.
Coming out sometime.
The book. It's coming out sometime toward the end of March 2021. It'll be available. It'll be available on Amazon.com. Do you have an actual public? Be available on Amazon.com. Do you have an actual publication date planned?
I don't right now.
Publication date planned?
Don't right now, and I will.
An actual publication date planned?
I don't right now, and I will share with your listeners this. I'm self-publishing the book, and why maybe. And why maybe a brand. Publishing the book, and why maybe a brand expert. I am a newbie to self-publishing.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah,
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah, to self-publishing.
Well, let me tell you.
Oops. I only went a shortened one. Yeah, let me tell you.
Be to self-publishing.
Let me tell you.
Yeah,
my 2 books are self-published.
Tell you. Control T. Tell you, my 2 books.
Self-publishing.
Let me tell you, my 2 books are self-published.
See that? Get rid of the grunt. Let me tell you, my 2 books.
A newbie to self-publishing.
Let me tell you, my 2 books are self-published.
Tell you, my 2 books are self-published.
Let me tell you, my 2 books are self-published on Amazon, and it's a skill set that actually,
and it's a skill set.
On Amazon, and it's a skill set that actually, once you have it, it's a superpower. It's a superpower.
Yeah, I can see that as someone who's in the midst of acquiring. I can see that as someone who's in the midst of acquiring. Yeah, I can see that as someone who's in the midst of acquiring it. So I can see that as someone who's in the midst of acquiring it. So I'm feeling good.
So I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling.
I'm.
It. So I'm feeling good that it will be up by the end of the month, but everything is. Feeling good that it will be up. Feeling good.
Get rid of that.
Acquiring it. So I'm feeling good that it will be up by the end of the month, but everything is new to me, and so I don't have a specific date.
That little tick, see right there, that's what a click looks like.
And so I don't have a specific date yet because it's hard for me to know. I don't have a specific date yet because it's hard for me to know how long things are going to take.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why are you doing it? Why are you self-publishing a book? I mean, I'm not going to guess your age. Why are you self-publishing a book? I mean, I'm not going to guess your age. I'm not going to doing it. Why are you self-publishing a book? I mean, I'm not going to guess your age, but you're definitely north of trying new things just north of trying new things just for the heck of it age. You've reached what I would call the traditional years of, well, that's something I don't have to pay attention to anymore.
Yeah, I'm definitely there, and I don't.
attention to anymore.
Yeah, I'm definitely there, and I don't have a problem with my age. And you said you were married 25 years. We celebrated our 26th last summer.
Yeah.
So, and I did not get married
still,
at 20.
Yeah.
Celebrated our 26th last summer.
Yeah.
So, and
See, you just clean stuff up. It's like using an eraser.
25 years. We celebrated our 26th last summer. Married 25 years. We celebrated our
years.
Problem with my age. And you said you were married 25 years. We celebrated our
years.
You said you were married 25 years. We celebrated our 26th last summer.
Yeah.
And I did not get married at last summer.
Yeah.
And I did not get married at 20.
Yeah. And I didn't get married at 20 either. But still, you're taking on this, it's basically a Herculean task to write a book, to have it designed if you're not designing it yourself, but work with a designer to do all the proofing, all the cover art, and just, there's so many things you don't know until you're in the midst of it, that it can drive you almost crazy. Why would you take that on at, I'm not going to say your age, but at your stage of career? What do you hope that book does for your personal brand? Does for your personal brand?
Well, so the more I talk to Well, so the more I talked about brands and adolescence with people, the more the light bulbs went off, and it was just so helpful to people. So I thought a book would helpful to people. So I thought a book would allow me to help more people, rather than working one-on-one. Not everybody can afford a consultant, but not everybody needs a consultant. So I wanted to get those ideas and that help out to the world. I'm also a writer. And that help out to the world. I'm also a writer. And ideas and that help out to the world. I'm also a writer. And I did not I'm also a writer, and I did not want to, once everything was done, I didn't want to wait 18 months until some publishing house determined that they could fit it into their schedule. I wanted creative control. Determined that they could fit it into their schedule. I wanted creative control, and I wanted to get it out as soon as I can. So, and then, as soon as I can. So, and then, and I wanted to get it out as soon as I can. And then, you talked about being at a certain stage of life. It's been really exciting, sometimes overwhelming. Been really exciting, sometimes overwhelming, but very exciting to learn so much new. First in the process of writing a book, because I worked with a professional editor and I learned so much. And then in the process the book because I worked with a professional editor and I learned so much. And then in the process of self-publishing, this is a in the process of self-publishing, this is a product. And then in the process of self-publishing, this is a product. I've always marketed myself as services, and now I have a product to market, and I wanted to learn about that.
Well, and don't underestimate the value of that product, because each one of those books, which, by the way, when you get your author's copies, you can buy them. When you get your author's copies, you can buy them in bulk yourself. And I don't know what your page count is, but let's say it's over 200 pages, 250 pages, something like that. It's going to come out to total cost for you, shipped to wherever you live, around $5 a copy. That to me is a pretty darn low cost premium brochure for myself, my personal brand, and my services. And I can see on your website that you're doing some speaking. Do you want to grow that side of your business? Because if you do, having a book is like a speaking. Do you want to grow that side of your business? Because if you do, having a book is like a godsend for the speaking circuit, because then you can get that book that represents because then you can get that book that because then you can get that book that represents everything about who you are, what you do, and how you do it in the hands of the bookers at events, at companies, at associations. And all of a sudden you can start a whole new career right when you are coming into what I think of as the Yoda years, which is I was Luke Skywalker swinging a lightsaber for a long, long time. I was Luke Skywalker swinging a lightsaber for a long, long time. Now it's okay for people to come to Dagobah to learn from Yoda, because I think our biggest to learn from Yoda, I think our biggest problem. Now it's okay for people to come to Dagobah to learn from Yoda. I think our biggest product right now is wisdom that's been attained over decades. Now it's the time for sharing that wisdom. And there are few better ways to do that than writing a book. And kudos to you for taking on the Augean stables of publishing, self-publishing. It's a pain, but boy, when it's done, it's like a true unlock or level. Boy, when it's done, it's like a true unlock or level up for yourself and your personal brand. Up for yourself and your personal brand.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about it. And I think that, I'm very excited about it. And I think that, when you see your words in print and laid out professionally, it's a gas, I got to say, it's very exciting. You asked me about very exciting. No, it's very exciting. You asked me about the speaking. It's very exciting. You asked me about the speaking. When I originally started writing the You asked me about the speaking. When I originally started writing the book, I definitely envisioned building up the speaking. Originally started writing the book, I definitely envisioned building up the speaking portion of my business. And that may still happen, but I have to say, I'm kind of looking in to see what happens post-pandemic, because I wonder how long it's going to take for those large-scale events to come back.
Okay,
So,
nobody knows.
scale events to come back.
Okay, nobody knows.
Come back.
Okay, nobody knows, but here's my guess.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pent-up energy, a lot of pent-up dollars that people have not spent on vacations and travel and stuff like that. So if all of a sudden everybody's inoculated, stuff like that. So if all of a sudden everybody's inoculated and in good shape, and you have the opportunity to have your company pay for you to go to a conference in pick any cool location, people are going to jump on that. Pick any cool location. People are going to jump on that like crazy. And I think the speaking biz will like crazy. And I think the speaking biz will come back. Now, I think it's also very important. Biz will come back. Now, I think it's also very important that people have learned, especially pro speakers, to have a virtual speaking product and an in-person speaking product. Because I look at someone like Jay Baer, who you may know or not know. He does a ton of, who you may know or not know. He does a ton. Bear, who you may know or not know. He does a ton of public speaking. Someone like Jay Baer, who you may know or look at someone like Jay Baer, who you may know. He does a ton. Someone like Jay Baer, who you may know.
Okay, so who you may not know, you may know, you may not know. Get rid of it. Just clean it up. Jay Baer, yeah. He does a ton.
I look at someone like Jay Baer. He does a ton of public speaking. I just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face socially distanced.
Socially distanced.
ton of public speaking. I just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to.
He did one of his first.
Just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face.
He did
socially.
He did. Can I get did? He did.
Of public speaking. I just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face.
All right, so what I can do, did you hear that click? If I bring these up and butt them together, it might get rid of the click.
Of public speaking. I just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face socially
there's
distanced.
A little bit.
Talks.
All right. That he did. All right, so what I'm going to do, get rid of that click. I am going to go like that. Let's see if that got rid of the click.
That he did one of his first.
All right, so I need to have a little bit more did.
That he did one of his first face.
Yeah. Not loving this. Did.
That he did one of his first.
Oops.
Social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face.
All right, that's not perfect, but it got rid of the click. So
then in-person speaking product, because I look at someone like Jay Bear.
Oh, yeah.
He does a ton of public speaking. I just saw in his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face socially distanced talks to somebody. To face socially distance talks to somebody recently.
Few less pauses.
On his social feed that he did one of his first face-to-face socially distance talks to somebody recently. And that's a good sign that people are kind of going.
Oh.
Dang it. Land. Almost done. I'm going to find the end.
Go to eStars. So
yeah, well, and make sure that for me this week, I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and she is
Evelyn Starr.
And I'll be talking at you again next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Shorten this up so you can see the end. Still have a little bit to go, but I'll be honest with you, I'm getting hungry. So I'm going to cut this live stream short and say thank you so much for listening. If there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. I'm DP Knudten. You can reach me at DP Knudten. All of it spelled just like, where the heck is it? Oh, it's right there. Just like that. DP Knudten. DP at dpknudten.com. That's my email address. And I'd love to talk to you in the future. But until then, that's it for today and this week's GarageBand editing in real life. GarageBand 101. What the heck is this called? Dang it. GarageBand podcast editing in real life 101 with DP Knudten. That's it for this week. I should really know what this is called by now, but that's me. I'm DP Knudten. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be talking at you again next time. But until then, let's play some outro music, shall we? I'll see you next Saturday.